there's going to be a lot of people that don't see what you see. And you really can't be discouraged by that. We're a local Montana business, which is always kind of weird because we do seafood.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
It's Mars B.
And Kavo.
And this is The Vault at 201 North Broadway.
A business podcast.
Where we bring you entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders of Montana.
To share their stories, expertise, industry insights, and strategies.
And we are sharing them all with you every single week.
You don't want to miss this.
Learn how to better start, manage, and grow your business.
And your leadership style.
Tangible takeaways to save you time and improve whatever it is that you're working on.
You're listening to The Vault.
Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting The Vault at 201 North Broadway. Big Sky Economic Development provides leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, community development, and workforce development. Learn more at bigsky-economic-development.org.
Today, joining us on The Vault is Jon Wanderaas. Welcome. We are delighted to have you.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to talk to you today about just your story with Alaskan Seafood Guys and how you got it started, what your experience is to starting that. And yeah, we're just really happy to have you on the podcast.
Awesome. Yep. Appreciate it.
Well, let's jump right in and talk about growing up in Petersburg, Alaska.
Nice. Yes. So, so grew up in Petersburg, Alaska, tiny little fishing town in Southeast Alaska, kind of in between Ketchikan and Juneau. And
I'm going to nod my head like I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'll be looking
at
an Alaskan map
I was
later.
a travel agent, so I know all about that,
Yep.
that loop because of, cruises.
Yeah. Very, very popular spot, along the Inside Passage. And it's all about fishing, the seafood industry, and then tourism, which comes all the cruise ships and all that stuff. But, so, I mean, it was an island community. So a very small town, about 3,000 people. And it's all about and based on like fishing. It was founded by Norwegian fishermen like back in the day as a spot for like a cannery.
Oh, okay.
And
cool.
That's really how it grew up. I moved there when I was 4 with my mom and then my stepdad, and they both worked for the Forest Service. So we weren't one of those families that was like generations of fishing.
Yeah.
Which a lot of those people are up there. But when you grow up there, like you kind of idolize all the fishermen. There's like these really nice boats, not so nice boats. There's they call them the highliners, like the really big time fishermen. So it's kind of like your own small little like, celebrity world too at the same time. So you really look up to these guys. And
where does Deadliest Catch fall into that?
yeah, so Deadliest Catch is all up north.
Okay.
So that's all like Bering Sea and all that. And I mean, that would be cool to kind of talk about a little later too, because I definitely have some connections to that. But yeah, so I mean, grew up, wanting to fish. That's what you do. Like as you get, old enough, about 14, 15, you spend your summers working on fishing boats. Huh. So everyone there,
So was that you, 14 or 15? You started into fishing?
So my first real like summer job was when I was 14. I started working on a tender. What a tender is, that's actually a boat that all the fishing boats that are catching the fish, they come to and offload to tenders so they can stay out and just keep fishing.
Okay.
And then we're just that boat that runs fish from like, the fishing grounds to the seafood factories back and forth.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what I started doing. And it's kind of crazy because when I was 14, that job was based out of Juneau, Alaska, on a boat. So I was, 14 in Juneau all summer long, away from my parents. And,
wow.
Alaska's a little different in that area too, because we started traveling for like sports when I was like 7. So we were taking ferry rides. We were staying with other families. So like the more you look back at that, it was kind of, you kind of like grow up that way.
To be a little bit more independent.
Yeah, but I look at it now and I'm like shipping my son off. You know what I mean? Like especially in other areas where there's other areas I fished to where I was gone. Like I flew up north in June and, by June 10th, I was on the waters. My family didn't hear from me for like 4 or 5 weeks.
Wow.
And I think about that now with my son. I'm like, man, I mean, that's actually kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Different lifestyles. Like you just grew up doing it and it's like, that's normal life.
It's definitely normal. But yeah, so I mean, that kind of gives you guys just, kind of a snapshot of what Petersburg was like. I mean, growing up though, I mean, it was all outdoors. It's all the hunting and fishing. I mean, you can kind of picture it living in Alaska, a little remote. I mean, nothing like some of the places up north, but yeah, definitely a big time fishing town.
And so growing up, did you just keep working in the summers like that on the tender, or did you then transition to a fishing boat?
Yeah, were you like on the high boats?
The Highliners.
The Highliners?
Yeah, so my first job was tender, which was kind of good. A lot of the younger guys, kind of start out on those boats, not as complicated, technically not making as much money as well. But a lot of kids start there, and then that led to a fishing job up in Bristol Bay, Alaska, where gill netting for red salmon up there. And then, so I ended up tendering, and then next summer got me up to Bristol Bay, where I was, I fished up there from 15 years old up until, my senior year in college.
Oh, wow.
So I kept going up there every year. And then that was a fishery to where you'd go up there in June. It would wrap up, really by like the middle into July. So then we would come back down to Petersburg in that area, and then we'd hop on seiners and fish the rest of the summer in that area.
So when you're saying fish, can you just describe for those, myself included, that maybe aren't as familiar of like, so you guys are out catching things like all day. Are you doing like big nets? Do you just have like fishing lines all lined out? Like give us a visual of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, commercial fishing or harvesting fish, there's tons of different methods. And mainly what I was doing up there in the summertime was all salmon fishing. Mm-hmm. So when I was up in Bristol Bay, that's a gill net fishery. So really you think about that, that's just like a wall, like a net that's just a wall in the water. There's what's called a cork line. So it's just all of these like corks that are like small buoys that kind of keeps everything floating. And then you almost think of it like a chain link fence, right? But just instead of like the chain, it's like fishing line, for example. Okay. But it's still those same kind of like meshes.
Yeah.
And then on the bottom, it's a lead line, a heavy line that keeps the net down. So essentially, you have a cork line, you have a lead line, and then just like a wall in the water.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And it's kind of crazy. So if you imagine a salmon or a fish going through like your typical like chain link fence, right? The head goes through, and then it can't get back out because it tries to back out. The gills
get stuck. Oh, makes sense. Gill net.
A gill net. So, that's a type of, that's a harvesting method that's been around for a long, long time. Up in Alaska, everyone does a really good job up there of, there's different types of net sizes. So when you're fishing for salmon, you're targeting a certain size of fish. So you have, a few different like mesh sizes to catch that salmon. And that allows like all the other type of seafood or fish or, marine life to go through those nets as well, which is kind of nice because there's a lot of stuff, about just sustainability and bycatch and other fisheries that can be really bad.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's basically what that is. So we have a super long net out there, and kind of depending on like the tide, the areas, kind of knowing the channels and where those fish are going, that's where you set that net. And I mean, it's, you have a wall in the water. But it's crazy to think about that there's schools of like, thousands and thousands of fish traveling and just hitting these nets. And, we were one of, many, many boats out there. And Bristol Bay is a very well-known, successful fishery that's been around for, over 100 years, I think, in a commercial method.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we were doing there. And then down in Southeast, we would fish for pink salmon. And that's purse seining. So that's actually, probably stuff you've seen more on TV as well, or like in the movies. That's like the big net circling around. And then it's kind of hard to describe, but there's what's called a purse line. So once you set that net, you actually set it like in a big circle, and it more or less, you can just imagine it connecting. And then as you're hauling the net in, there's this line that kind of cinches it up.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually you're left with this just purse or like big bag of fish, And that's what sometimes you guys see, like, YouTube videos and whatnot of the fish pouring over the rails of the boat. So that's that purse net just finally coming just to that pocket and then coming onto the boat.
Oh, okay.
So
and then they sort, right?
Yeah, then you sort, everything actually will go into like the fish holds. And then the tenders is where things are sorted out.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so the different species.
And so then when you sell it, I'm guessing these boats that are out fishing, is that where like the selling transaction happens? Like right when you sell it to the other boat that then sorts it and takes it inland, or?
Actually, yeah. Yeah, so like what the tenders do is, they're like a floating, not fish plant, but like just the buying aspect of it.
I was like fish bank.
Yeah, fish bank. Yep, kind of. So really, what they're doing is if you're not actually coming into town to deliver to like a cannery or like a factory, which you don't want to, right? Because, all these little boats they're all small businesses.
Yeah.
So these guys want to maximize the 2 to 3 months throughout the whole year that they have, that short window to just fish. It's all production. Mm-hmm. So with the tenders out there, that makes it a lot easier. They don't have to go back and forth. But yeah, so the tenders actually have these fish pumps. So it's like this big giant hose that gets put into the hold of the actual fishing boats, and it just sucks all the fish out. And there's these big sorting lines on the tender. So all these fish are pouring down these conveyor belts on the tender. And all of us deckhands who are working on the boat, the catching boat, we would sort out like pink salmon, king salmon, sockeye, stuff like that.
Okay.
And so you get a different price based on
those.
Okay. And then all that fish gets weighed out, and that's how, fishermen get paid.
Wow.
Wow.
And so it is just that short season. So it's not just like that's the chunk for the summer, and then there's like a winter or whatever that looks like in Alaska. It's really just that time in the summer.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it. So for salmon anyways. And that's what's kind of cool and interesting and challenging about like wild fisheries. Mm-hmm. So they're obviously so seasonal. So the first like salmon fishery of the year is in about the middle of May. It's the Copper River fishery. So that's one that everybody knows, Copper River salmon, Copper River kings. Yeah, I mean, salmon fishing is really, depending on the species, 2 to 3 months.
Wow.
Just in the spring to summertime, and then that's done.
Then you have to fight with bears and
all that
in the water.
I know.
But yeah, and that's why a lot of fishermen, they don't have all their eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Right? So these are very expensive boats. Assets, I guess.
Yeah.
You think of it as small businesses. So they may have a permit or a license to fish salmon, but then they'll have permits or license to do other fisheries too.
Okay.
So just to keep that boat, operating throughout the year and making, more money.
Yep. More payments on the expensive boats.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pay boat loans and all that. So
yeah. I feel I had family that the guys, they all did like a fishing trip, and I remember like they brought it back so that they did salmon for sure, and then like halibut or something, but the salmon was so beautiful, like, and thick.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good. Like it was so good.
Yeah.
Just not exactly what you can get in stores today.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference because a lot of people, you see something like that and you go to a supermarket and you're like, what's going on here? Like, why is that like that and this like that?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know that. And there's so many variables and unknowns, which it can kind of taint seafood in a way too for a lot of people. But, a lot of things right now are, with everything going on in the economy, everyone's trying to, save money. And so a lot of the farm salmon is a lot less expensive. So a lot of supermarkets, you'll see, the farm salmon, and that's going to be, salmon that's raised in pens, and instead of the wild stuff swimming through the ocean, all lean and mean and eating the wild stuff, it's fed, feed and pellets. So it's just not biologically the same.
Yeah, it's just different.
Big, giant fat lines in it. It's not as lean. So yeah, it's just a lot different visually.
Mm-hmm. So
and probably taste-wise as well, right?
Definitely.
Did you go to college then in Alaska, or did you go in the upper 48?
University of Montana Grizzlies, baby.
Wow. Okay. And so what brought you to Montana?
Yeah. So I grew up in Alaska with my mom and my stepdad. And then my dad's actually from Montana. So I would spend summers, since I was 4, I'd spend summers down here.
Too.
Until you got your fishing job.
Until I got my fishing job. And then, and then those summers, obviously we're up in Alaska. But grew up spending 2 months, down here. My dad lived in Harleton. where my brother
cool.
lived
Yeah.
too. Yep. So
Arlo.
Yep. So experience, small town Montana. Got to play baseball down here a little bit.
Cool.
And
I think they're the locomotives, if I'm not
engineers.
mistaken. Or engineers. Yep.
Yep. Engineers.
The train. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, and then that was my connection, to Montana. Most of my family's down here. My family's actually from eastern Montana.
Oh,
so
cool.
we had,
Where at?
Vida.
Okay.
Over by Wolf Point.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, kind of have that Montana connection, which is really cool. And, eventually moved down here in 2014 and then was still working up in Alaska. But yeah, started this full time, I think in about 2018.
So tell us about this and what you started.
Yeah. So Alaskan Seafood Guys, we're 6 years in now, and it's just been a lot of just kind of craziness and changes. I'm sure like most small businesses, being more of a food kind of like retailer, direct to consumer business, we've just, evolved, changed, pivoted so much. Just as we've grown and like, obviously what's happened around us too has forced us to change. But, originally I was at a point to where before I started this, I was running. So I transitioned from working on boats to running and managing like seafood factories up in Alaska.
Like a cannery, right?
Like Cannery. So I was doing that for about 6 or 7 years after college. Mm-hmm. But then, was down here full time, had my little guy, and the whole, 8 months out of the year up in Alaska was just
it's hard.
And not going to happen anymore. So, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. One thing I was already doing was I was bringing some salmon and seafood, back down here and just getting it to, family members or my first customer, I guess you could say, was my dentist.
Oh,
and I was giving him, cases of salmon. And
were you guys doing like a little side payment? Just kidding.
No. I mean, exactly. Yeah.
I'll get the treatment. I'll bring you some fish.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely some of that, trying to trade whenever I could, but then also just, like selling actual cases. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of where it started. I was trying to kind of do some other things too, and I wasn't totally focused on this. I'd always kind of had some ideas and written some things down about like a direct-to-consumer seafood business, but it was actually not really like my focus. But then,
you're like, I have all these connections with all these fishermen.
It just kept evolving.
Was your degree business at the U of M?
No, so it was wildlife biology.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Up until my junior year, and then realized like that wasn't my thing, and then I finished with communications.
Cool.
Yeah, and so it kind of just kept evolving. It got to the point to where, in 2018, started taking it a little bit more serious and just started with a Facebook page and kind of promoting like who I was, the story, and we were just kind of doing like little deliveries around Billings. Mm-hmm. And then we ended up starting with a trailer, which was kind of like
I remember the trailer.
Yeah, it's kind of what we were known for in Billings, like when we first got started.
But you had a different name at that time.
Yeah, so we originally started out as Billings Seafood Guys. That was just kind of the idea, just, local, kind of like in the area, surrounding area. But we just started doing, pop-up events, farmers markets, and just kind of started realizing like, oh, okay, like that's actually kind of working. And it's a lot of fun, really like doing it. And then we ended up getting a second trailer, kind of starting to build up a team a little bit. We were traveling kind of as far as like Glendive. We went as far as like Riverton, Lander, Wyoming, into Cody, Sheridan. So we were covering a pretty good, area. Then we started some online stuff with shipping our seafood, started subscription boxes, and it was going pretty good. And then, and then COVID hit, like everybody. COVID. And we were no longer able to go into some towns with our trailers. Really interesting time. So that kind of changed everything, and we switched over to home delivery. So that's kind of where we are now, in the sense to where through all of that and time, we switched things to where now we have like a retail presence in Billings. We have our online presence where we ship all of our products nationwide, and then we have home delivery routes. So we have towns throughout Montana and Wyoming, just starting into South Dakota now, but we deliver to those places once a month. Yeah, I mean, another thing that we evolved into is just seeing the nature of the business. We got into like meal kits. So we started doing
I see those at the gym I go to.
Yeah. So we started doing.
That was a huge reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, is because you do an amazing job about listening to your demand and reevaluating and then acting on what you're seeing your customers are wanting. And that brought about your meal kit. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. And what's funny is like we were just having conversations this week of how we're not doing a good job. I feel like we still have so much, and we're constantly getting more from our customers. But I think that's that never-ending battle too.
Oh yeah,
as long as you're going that way, because there's so much. Like
absolutely,
it's almost too much, more than we can handle right now. Of like, we should be doing this, tweaking that. Yeah, the biggest thing is we really saw, and I think it was a little bit with the economy too, and just everything. But it's almost like we were putting ourselves into a corner. Like we were only offering, very high end niche seafood that was pretty expensive, had a really cool story behind it, but we were really kind of putting ourselves in a way to where like we didn't have a huge customer base, because not everybody is able and willing to pay that type of money. And unless you were in Billings, I mean, you were having to buy 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds at a time. And, where we're at now, asking a customer to spend, $100 to $400 on seafood is, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
And it really narrowed, who our customer was. Yeah. I mean, we just kind of started seeing a need for that, some ideas. We had done like seafood boil cookouts before. Mm-hmm. When I grew up in Petersburg, like for sports, we would do like fundraisers with big like shrimp feeds and seafood boils and cookouts. So that's kind of where all that stuff came together. And then, just through all that research, figured out ways to like turn it into something that we could make, something that's easy at home, and then a pretty decent price point. And that's where all that came from. Yeah. And then that just opened up a huge kind of door for us. It really opened us up to a larger customer base. In our business especially, but I mean, when you have someone who can grab a pretty good quality product for $7-8, it's a full-on dinner that you just throw in the oven.
Yep.
It's got the salmon in there. You don't have to worry about knowing how to cook it yourself, how to, maybe ruin it. That was a big deal for us. So we were able to get a lot more customers that are willing to go into something like that instead of, buying a 5-pound box of just salmon.
Of just salmon, yeah. And then they're like, now I have to store it and figure out how to cook all of this. Exactly. And versus, and that's why I love the boils, is because I mean, it's a fast dinner. I mean, 8 minutes, right?
Yep.
You you give them everything to do with it, and then they can get an oil or a butter, and then done.
All the fixings are with it. And that was just one of those things that like I've realized as you are in this type of business where you're like doing the R&D and trying to come up with new products, it's really rare to find that one that just pops. And we found it right away. But that ruined it for all of our other products. 'Cause, now it's like, out of 10 that you come up with, you're lucky to have one that really takes off. Yep. You might have one that just kind of moves the needle a little bit and customers do enjoy, but one that really just pops and like really affects your business. You kind of realize that now in all these other businesses, like it's really hard to find. So we were lucky on that one.
So 2 things. You talked a little bit about the name, and I would love to know like what prompted the switch of the name. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with that, and then I have lots of questions. So we'll start with that one.
Definitely. So
I'm getting hungry as well.
And I think like too, just for the audience to know, how are you sourcing all of this? Like, are you working with people that you have old relationships with? And so I think that'd be interesting to talk about too.
Absolutely. So the name change came about really because we started doing so much outside of Billings.
Yep. And
really when we started doing the shipping, we just found right away, it's like we were marketing. I mean, we were having customers in Oklahoma, New York, like all over. And the Billings was not an easy one to kind of get around. Yeah. A lot of questions. So that's where we made that switch. And I think maybe 2.5 years ago or so now. Mm-hmm. And, it's tough because now we're kind of at the point where we're doing so many more kits. We're starting to do things outside of Alaska. So it's like, man, it may be time for another name change down the road, which is tough because that's really hard.
Yes. Oh yeah. It is a big change because people are used to that one name.
Yeah.
I know I still mess up because I've been with you since Billings Seafood Guys. Yep. And so sometimes I have to catch myself and be like, Alaskan Seafood Guys.
Yeah. And, it's kind of cool because here in Billings, we still have some of our original like Billings Seafood Guys stuff down the store. When we kind of redid our retail store, which you guys will have to come down there now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I need to come build my boil.
Yeah, well, we've got, it's completely different now, the retail store. It's really cool, and we got a long ways to go, but it's got just so much more of a cool feel to it.
Yeah.
But we've got some like old, like Billing Seafood Guys signs that were made up, like, when we first started.
You've created your own museum now.
Kind of, and we're embracing it, and it's cool because, like you said, a lot of people in Billings still know us as Billing Seafood Guys, and fortunately that
the
works.
OG seafood truck.
Well, it's like an evolution
Right.
of your brand.
It is,
Yeah.
it is, and it's really cool because hopefully we can keep growing and kind of see where we go, and hopefully a lot of people here in Billings just remember that. So yeah, that's kind of where that came about, and then so with the sourcing, the sourcing has always been my favorite part. Just because, that's where I'm from, where I grew up. So when we first started, we were really just bringing stuff in like directly from my buddies, like who were still fishing up there full time, or from some of the seafood plants and factories that, I worked at. We were getting like partial loads from my buddies. We were getting the fish processed in other plants and then just getting that stuff shipped down here. We're still doing that, not as much. What I realized is that a lot of my buddies were just doing me favors because when they have a whole boatload of fish, for me to get, at that time too, just being small and, you can't buy a whole boatload.
Yeah.
They were doing me a big favor of just giving me 1,000 pounds. They were hand sorting that out, putting it in a tote, driving it down to a fish plant, like for me, like as they were up in Alaska, finishing up their trip. I'm down here in Montana.
Were they trading beef or how was this working here?
They were honestly just really into it. I was able to get them a little bit more money out of it, which was cool, but it wasn't huge because it wasn't, massive volume. So, we're not doing as much of that, but we're getting really close to be able to have the volume to do like
a boatload.
Yeah. And eventually we really want to get to the point to where that is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of just the economics and all that, but we're hoping to get back to that point when it comes to just the seafood, and the Alaskan stuff. But yeah, other than that, right now, we're working with a lot of like the factories I used to work for. I spent a lot of time running a factory for Silver Bay Seafoods, Trident Seafoods, Icicle Seafoods, so like a lot of the smaller plants that I worked with, still have connections with those like production managers, plant managers that are, getting that stuff for us now, which is really cool. And then, just through all of my experience and kind of knowing all the different, seafood like brokers and salespeople, just kind of not just in Alaska, but all around, now we're starting to get stuff from, the East Coast. We're doing lobster, we're doing scallops. We do a little bit of Washington crab too, when we need a little bit more outside the Alaskan crab. So that's just constantly evolving. And then now it's opened up a whole new thing now that we're doing the kits. So now we're like bringing in, your corns and potatoes and stuff like that.
Yep.
And that's been kind of nice working with guys like Shamrock Foods on stuff like that, which is really cool. But yeah, and then we're constantly just trying to look at like new products. Like we just started working with Fishtail General Store, which is really cool. So for people that don't know about them, and I don't want to give away too much, but they're really amazing.
A cool operation.
I don't think people really know what they really have going on out there. Like you just think of the Fishtail General Store, but there is so much more to that operation. But we're doing like, baked goods with them, pies, cheesecakes.
Cool.
We're in the works of trying to have them produce some different like kits and some things for us. But
should do a lobster pot pie. I'm just throwing that out there.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Is that what you're doing? We can cut it out, John. We can cut this out.
No, you're good. You're good. So what's funny is that's one of like the top 3.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that
So-
sounds
Oh,
delicious.
it's so
I'm starving.
good. Oh my gosh.
One of my favorite
meals I've ever had.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do is just scour the internet of like some of these other cool like food companies, especially on the East Coast. And we have got so much influence from those guys. But we do lobster grilled cheese now.
Okay. You have your lobster roll kit too.
Yeah, lobster roll kit. So lobster grilled cheese, lobster roll kit, that came from, a lot of influence from the East Coast. But yeah, lobster pot pie.
That sounds
So
delicious.
good.
I've ordered a couple. We're kind of, trying to figure out that recipe right now. But yeah, they're great. But what I've noticed too is we've done some things that just don't drive down here.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? And a lot of times too, it's the price point. And lobster is getting killed right now.
Yeah.
So the price of lobster is super high. Our lobster roll kits have gone up so much. Lobster grilled cheese, barely hanging in there. Lobster pot pie would be another tough one, but it's just tough because seafood too, because all of our stuff is focused around seafood. It definitely makes it a little more difficult because that's a market that fluctuates, daily.
Yes.
And
and when you're in a landlocked state, I think, Billings is great, but not a lot of people. It's hard to educate people on how delicious seafood is. We're good with fish, I feel, but some of the crustaceans really freak people out.
Yeah, totally. And, we started bringing in crawfish. We're doing, crawfish boils and stuff like that.
I love that.
And that's a cool one too, because, there's a lot of people down here, from the South, work the refineries and just, a lot of
from
people
Texas,
come in. Yeah.
And they're like, where are my seafood boils?
Yeah. So crawfish is, we were just having this conversation in a meeting earlier this morning, but we're going to do a few more boils with crawfish, trying to put a little bit more focus on that. But yeah, locally it's not too popular, but it's getting there.
You do a great job marketing though. I guess, what are your marketing tips that you would provide people? Because I don't know if it's just me because I'm always liking your stuff and I buy stuff from you guys, but I always see your stuff and I get your emails and you guys send text messages and.
Yeah. Well, thank you on that too. Cause that's another thing where I'm like, we're not doing enough. Or, we're constantly still trying to figure out that perfect match. But I think my biggest tip for marketing is do more than what you think you should do.
Okay.
One thing that I thought was so interesting is, and I still do so many of those guerrilla tactics, like we post, we do a Facebook post, 3 times a day.
Sometimes because people's algorithm, and I think that's the other, it's an ever evolving, changing thing because algorithms change. If you like something, you're going to start to see it more. Yeah. So
if you interact with the post, so you want interaction, right? That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And, we struggle with it because we've been doing it for so long. That's just our thing now. And we're kind of jumping back and forth of 2 a day, 3 a day. Cause I think for a lot of people, they may be doing 4 or 5 a week, at the most.
Mm-hmm. You should do something every day.
Yeah.
Or multiple times a day.
And it's still a struggle because, some of the times it's those are organic. It's not like they're boosted or anything like that or ads. So it's how much are you really getting out of it? But it's kind of one of those things that, we can measure it to an extent, but it's kind of just part of our, just who we are now. So we're definitely going to keep that going. But the other thing is anything and everything to build lists. I think, it's cool because I've always thought of us as we're a local Montana business, which is always kind of weird because we do seafood. But, I try to emulate or take so much, get so many ideas, influence from outside businesses, bigger businesses. And I think, a lot of smaller local Billings businesses, Montana businesses, they act like very small local Montana businesses, So maybe they're not trying to reach those larger audiences or they're not trying to do some of those more finesse type moves growing their email list and getting those email flows going, offering the promos and coupons to bring people in for first purchases, knowing what your, customer acquisition cost is and knowing all your numbers and, the difference between text message, how to utilize SMS versus email. But I think that's a huge thing that I would recommend is, jumping on a thing like Klaviyo or MailChimp, and learning all of the ins and outs of email marketing and growing those lists. And I had actually just met someone a couple of weeks ago that has a beef business, and they're very good on email. They're very good. They're very witty. They're doing everything on their own. And, they just started and they were talking about, how they have 500 email subscribers. And, that's something that, I think they've been going for about maybe 3-4 months or something.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's
a
great.
lot right out of the gate.
Targeting that. When you really get into it, there's ways that you can get an email list of 10,000 people in, 5-6 months, and growing that stuff. But that probably be my biggest thing too, is just saying the list. I think that's huge is once you get that customer for the first time, continuing to talk to them.
Yeah.
And we generate a lot from email. And I think a lot of people just kind of think email's dead. But that's probably a third of our revenue generation.
Yeah. Well, and it helps you reach different audiences, especially if people aren't on social media. I think the texting and emailing. I get a lot of texts from different companies, even locally and or nationally, because I've bought a shirt, I've bought something and now I get it. And sometimes I'm like, it's a good reminder of like, oh, they're having a sale, or, like there's something new. I want to see that. And I think email does that too, where if you're not on social media, I mean, you get a big audience, I think, on social media, but there's also a good chunk of the population that really isn't on it as much. So diversifying how you talk to your audience is huge.
Absolutely. And one thing we're trying to figure out too is, it's like, how do we do other things besides that? Because we have such an audience that's on email, that's on Facebook or on Instagram maybe, but I feel like we're missing a huge customer base that's not in that
realm.
And we're trying to figure out how to do it. So if you guys have any guests and got ideas, because I mean, we've done like, newspaper inserts to like smaller towns. We've had success with that once. Like, I think it was kind of like the seafood boil. Like the very first time we did it, we knocked out of the park. And then every other time after that, just total dud.
Oh gosh.
And so, stuff like that's hard. We tried local newspapers. We tried really small local newspapers too. Small towns like Forsyth, Glendive, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, just haven't had much luck. So we're still trying to figure all that out as well.
Well, and I think those little towns, I mean, because I'm from one too, but it's like the Schwansman was that was a thing growing up, where you could get different things like that you couldn't get at your little grocery store.
Yeah.
And or it's really hard to like transport ice cream in a cooler, for example, for 2-4 hours, which is like really, unless you're getting it like the kind of basic flavors at your local small town grocery store. If you want those other things, like the Schwan
those
Man
golden nugget bars,
or the little ice cream dip things with the confetti. But like that was a huge thing. And I don't know if they're like, I'm thinking of where I grew up, and I'm like, I don't think they have one anymore that stops there.
No, I don't even think Schwan's is in Billings anymore.
Yeah, they moved a lot of their depots out. A lot of their just stuff is online now. They do have a couple depots, but and I mean, man, we've studied Schwan so much. I mean, I've kind of talked to some older Schwan's employees, really researched that company. And, that's always another question too, is like, is that the model?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you do? You go house to house asking if you want to do a seafood subscription.
And that's what we're trying to figure out is, for the next kind of wave of growth. Because we kind of hit a point to where, we're doing good. We've grown to like, what we're doing now. With our online stuff, our store and our deliveries, but it's, I guess we're kind of trying to learn how to scale. And that's a whole different thing that I've been trying to figure out for about a year now. But, so many different, you really got to figure out your strategy. And I keep thinking we're getting close to it. And then, we try something and may kind of fall right in our face and it didn't work. But that's kind of where we are now with like, is something like that the way to go? Is it opening up, smaller stores in these different areas and have delivery hubs? That's kind of what we're trying to figure out now. It's really tough.
Well, one of the great things is that you're always learning and adapting. And I think that is one of the most important pieces of business ownership. With that being said, I think that is one of the most valuable pieces that business owners who are listening today need to understand is don't be stagnant in your business.
Yeah.
Continuing to listen to what's happening in your market and adapting to that
I think
will make huge differences.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, I see it every single day when I walk in. I mean, I go in the morning, so I'm like, I should go in the afternoon, and that then I would. But I think the meal ones in the fridge at the gym are so genius because you have these people that are like kind of they're health conscious, otherwise they wouldn't be at the gym. They wrap up their workout at the end of the day if they're like the afternoon crowd, and they just grab it and go and have like an easy meal when they get home, so they don't have to like really put a lot of time into putting dinner together. It's like already put together for them.
Yeah.
Like such a perfect spot for those.
Yeah. And I think we've got a lot of opportunities that we're still trying to kind of figure out. And, one thing that always kind of rattles my brain and drives me nuts is kind of trying to figure out too, like going to your customers. Like you guys probably know where our store is. It's attached to our warehouse. So we're not in a mainstream area.
You're a destination.
Yeah. So we're off of 32nd and Hesper. I mean, we've got a big doggy daycare and a business like Harvest Tech. So there's actually some pretty like volume businesses there that a lot of people do go by. The new Costco not being too far away helps. That's the thing. I mean, we're not like right there around our customers. And, we go to like the gyms and you see all those people there. And, that always rattles my brain. We go to the farmers markets, the Billings farmers market. just drives me nuts because we just do so much business right there in that 3-4 hour window just because everybody is right there. And, trying to take all those like opportunities and like those experiences, that's just all that, it's all part of it.
Yeah.
And we're just constantly trying to figure that out of like, does it make sense to like get a more high traffic store?
Yep.
But, you look at the economics of our business and everything works there because everything's under one roof, and it's,
There's costs associated with
and I think
another location.
Yeah, and like business owners, it's hard, because like you, especially if you've gone through in your journey, you've had close calls, which we've had quite a few that we kind of barely escaped out of, and we're still going. But once you get to a point where things are going good, you're paying yourself, the business is going good, you got money for growth and all that. Those decisions can be tough.
So how big is your team?
Yeah, so right now there is myself, and then we just brought on another team member. So there's myself and 6 others right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, awesome.
That's a good size.
So what sets you apart in your business from other seafood stores?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, I really think our strategy, our focus on the customer, and, when I say strategy, what I mean by that is we're actually, believe it or not, we're trying to be a high quality, low cost provider.
Which is so hard.
It's so hard. And yeah, it dictates the way you run your business.
Mm-hmm.
And, it took me a while to figure that out. But I think, that's where we want to be. It may not necessarily be the best thing for business right away to where, you could be selling $100 kit for 1 to 2 people, and try to make it really more premium. But I love seeing the people come in store that are like, wow, like you can get a $7 shrimp dinner kit. And I'm going to McDonald's now and paying $14-15 for one meal.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I enjoy being, just that
attainable, like,
very attainable. But, and a lot of times too, I mean, we got a wide customer base. We got people on a, very high end, and we got people that are a little bit more on the lower end, and being able to have products that actually satisfy that whole spectrum is really cool. And I think it's, hopefully it pays off. But it definitely opens us up to a lot more people. But that's really where we want to be, and I think that definitely separates us, and that can allow us to get into markets and have people try us right away without being a huge investment. I mean, we really rely on getting people in the door with just like what the heck, you guys have a seafood boil kit like here in Montana, or like a shrimp dinner.
Mm-hmm.
It's $15 or it's $6. So it's a low cost investment to get people in, but then we really try to keep them just with that experience and the quality.
Yeah.
And I do think that's what's going to allow us to hopefully keep expanding and going into new products. But it can be very hard to actually stay that way.
Yeah.
Because you have to run your whole business differently. Because
you're based on volume then.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And there's a lot of things that we haven't even hit yet that, we're going to have to do to continue that. But I think that's going to be one of our biggest separators. And then, I like to say this now as, where we're at, and hopefully, our goal is to stay that way wherever we end up growing to, but to be that smaller, locally felt business.
Yeah.
Because even when we deliver to, we were just delivering to like Gillette, Wyoming yesterday, and just our customers there feel like our customers here, and it's cool to have that personal driver to do the delivery and stuff like that.
The same experience, right?
Yeah. And that's where I really like that versus like our online shipping where, we ship through UPS and, you're not 100% sure if that box is thrown on the door, if it's delivered perfect, if it's, you're not getting the hope you enjoy, or, do you have any questions? Like, don't forget all of our recipes online, or call us and the store, 7 days a week if you got questions on these.
Because you don't want to put too much information and materials in the box. Yeah. Because then they're like, oh my God, more of this. I just got to throw it out.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, we still do, but it's like, it really does make an impact. And, we're constantly battling that just with our own team of creating that experience. Yeah, I mean that's a big one for us, because I think that it really does let people kind of have that personal feel and connection to us. And just with our business, it can be kind of skeptical at
Yeah.
first because people are seeing us for the first time on a Facebook ad and, getting a delivery.
I think everyone's bought something from a Facebook ad and realized, dang, that's not really coming, is it?
Exactly. And, and we want to break through that because we're not a business that can just throw tons of money at Facebook without results too. So, yeah, I think those are some of the biggest things though.
So when you've talked about like adding new products, how do you, and doing like research, but what's more in that decision-making process for you of like, yep, we're going to do it, or no, we're not because of X?
One thing, the easiest way to do it is through our team and just our customer feedback. So we were just on a meeting this morning, and we were talking about a few new products to put into the retail store to test out and then maybe put online. But the first thing that came up from 2 of our team members was a 5-person crawfish boil. So we've been doing a 2-person crawfish boil for a long time. We just eliminated a couple of our seafood boils to make some room that weren't doing that well. And the first thing that came up was a 5-person crawfish. And that came from, customers asking, or customers coming in and consistently buying 2 or 3 of those 2-person kits, or just talking about crawfish feeds, or, doing add-ons in the seafood station. Mm-hmm. So that's one that we're just going to get going right away. That's a really easy one just to add on. It's not a big crazy like addition into like our little production area or anything like that. But that's
I love
just
that you also empower your staff to come up with ideas as well.
Definitely. No, I think that's huge. Yeah. I mean any of the frontline stuff, but yeah, so that's where that one came from. And we're probably going to have that, by the end of this week.
Yeah.
It's just really quick.
Yeah.
And do you go back to Alaska then at all? A lot if you're...
Oh, he's not looking. I'm going tomorrow.
Oh, you are? Oh, fun. Good. Yeah.
Yep.
So is that something is that just to like work on like vendor relations, like do some research on other things that they're doing in Alaska that you can bring back? Like, what is that like for you?
Yeah. So I'm going tomorrow. I'm actually surprising my parents.
Oh,
so that's a little different.
Don't worry. This won't air tomorrow.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Yeah.
But, I haven't been home. We try to get back once a year, but last year we ended up doing a family trip somewhere else. So I just haven't been back in a while. But this one's more so going back for family, seeing my friends, just going home. I'm definitely going to have a few meetings with some of the, fish plants there and stuff like that. But, truthfully, until we get back to a point to where we're really driven by like content creation, because that's just like a mecca. We did that one time, we did a trip up there, and my son Gavin and I we did a video of him like beach combing on the beach and just like all these things. And we kind of documented our whole story or our whole trip. So that was really cool. But truthfully, I can get most of that stuff done from home now.
Yeah.
Just through my knowledge or just, through the phone calls and all stuff like that. But there's always going to be that connection. I think as we get bigger and as our purchasing power grows, we'll be spending a lot more time up there, making sure like, our runs of fish that we're buying, are meeting our specs and stuff like that.
Quality control.
Yeah. So I think until we get to that point, there'll be more like, I guess, business related when we get to those points. But right now it's a little bit of both.
I think that's really cool. And I think back to Kayla's question of what makes you unique is I think that I don't know other seafood companies. But I'm guessing they don't have the background and they didn't grow up in it necessarily. Like if they're here stateside, maybe they're just doing it, but you have that experience. You grew up in it. And like, I think that's so unique. Your story alone is so unique.
Yeah. And then your whole mission is to make it good quality and accessible for all, right? And so I think that's also a point that's quite unique for your business.
Right. Like you're talking about these ships and these tenders, which it's like my mind goes to like a firefighting tender where it's like that's the refill for the other smaller trucks for water. But you have all these things and I'm like, I'm going to have to look some of this up because it just sounds cool and it's super unique for people that, aren't in that day in and day out or didn't grow up in Alaska.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's funny too, because kind of like what you see, throughout Montana and some of these other, neighboring states too with, with ranchers, there's been a big push in the direct to consumer, people doing farmers markets, getting their own stuff, slaughtered, butchered, packed and putting their own label on it. And that's essentially kind of, how I got going in a way. And there's a lot of people in Alaska doing that same thing. A lot of fishermen doing that. And, my hope is that we kind of take it to another level, because most of those people don't really break through. It's definitely a business. It's kind of borderline, business hobby, to where it's like, that's what you're relied on. Like, that's everything. There's no other income or anything like that coming in. So I'm really hoping we can kind of like be that model that kind of takes it to the other level, and hopefully can work with some of these guys too, because a lot of these fishermen that, have their direct consumer stuff, like they fish in Alaska. Perfect examples. There's guys like in Boise or, some other cities that when they're back from Alaska, they just post up at farmers markets and sell their products. So eventually it'd be cool to, be able to work with those guys and help those guys move their product too.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, and again, trying to keep more of that small local feel.
Yeah.
But, how can we, I think it's a challenge. And obviously there's a lot of businesses that, once they've grown, they kind of leave that. But I'm really hoping we can find ways to kind of stick with that. And there's probably a lot of different creative ways to do that. But.
Well, and I think wellness right now is it's just different than it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. Like what people are eating, where their products are sourced from, what's in them is so people care a lot. And they're like, if it's not, like, I'm not feeding it to my family, I'm not consuming it. So I think for Billings, Montana, and just the nation that you serve, to have that access to fresh quality seafood, and where it's coming from, it's a quality source, is huge. And like really right in with a little bit ahead of the times with beef, lamb. I mean, we had Sarah Hollenbeck on, and she was she's so funny. She's awesome. A ton of fun. But I mean, like, really showing consumers other products that they can be eating and feeding their families with.
Yeah. And what's kind of cool is there's actually like, there was the, I don't know why I'm blanking the name, but there was the program that I was part of, with the businesses.
The Food Hub?
No, the Accelerator?
The Accelerator,
and
there's a number of pretty cool, like...
manufacturers.
Food businesses, that are like...
Oh, like the waffles?
Yeah. I mean,
Georgette's
it is like
Galettes.
small scale, like manufacturing and production. And, being able to like kind of be in that, or, talk to some of these guys or get questions from them. It's actually pretty cool, like right here in Billings, that stuff's going on. But kind of back to what you said. I mean, I think a lot of businesses do end up kind of getting lucky in a way with the timing, and we're riding in on that for sure. We timed a lot of that stuff with the kits, and we're going to try to keep pushing it. And just, I think at the end of the day, it does come down though. I mean, it's kind of like sports too. I mean, it's like you got to perform. You got to have good quality stuff that keeps meeting those expectations, because we've messed up a number of times, and thankfully you hear about it pretty quick.
Yeah.
And you kind of make those changes. But
yeah.
Well, and one thing we kind of touched on it briefly is that you started this business. It was a pretty untapped industry in Billings. And I love that you have taken the time to educate people in our region to build your business up. But can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced and maybe how you started the education?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we first started...
and who's we? Because the guys, so just curious, because you're like, we. And I'm like, is it
we
just
is
you?
me, right?
Yeah, I always just refer
I know,
to that.
but I'm like, seafood guy sounds probably better than guy, but it is.
Hopefully you're setting
the
up
guy.
one day to bring Gavin in, right?
And that's
Family
actually
business.
that is actually where it came from. I always associated the S at the end, with my son. But yeah, I mean, when we first started, I mean, now we've got a pretty solid team, obviously. But yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it was just, myself. And then, we ended up having a few people running trailers and stuff. When I first started, it was just maybe where I was, what I was kind of influenced by, or really what I thought was going to be the driver. But we were so reliant on content creation. We were really big on that. I had a big vision that I thought eventually we were going to be generating like a majority of our revenue through like content, kind of a media aspect.
Okay.
And that definitely did not develop, where we are now. And hopefully, it could be something in the future. But we just spent so much time, doing all those videos, and I think we really pushed the story. I think we saw right away that was like one of our biggest just strengths.
Yeah.
And I think, myself, I think I'm just kind of one of those guys that it may not be the best thing, but I kind of work on the fly too, kind of just like kind of with that feel of like, you know, what's kind of working right now, because it does change. I mean, it changes pretty quickly. But at that time, I mean, it was all about that Alaskan story. And I really do think, you know, that got us really far. But it got to the point too to where it was almost like we hit a crossroads to where we were starting to get busy as we were getting evolving into kind of other areas. And you know, going back on it, I kind of wish we would have stuck with it, but we let a lot of that stuff kind of go into the wayside as we got busier and busier and had all these newer opportunities and these new products coming in, and just consumed my time so much. And it's kind of funny because the last about 5-6 months have been all about trying to kind of get more systems in place to, you know, kind of
create
help
efficiencies
with time and procedures for the team. And the hope is that, you know, kind of get some of that time back and really go back into it, because I think if we can take that approach with our kits, which we haven't taken that approach, you know, we haven't done all the tutorials online. We haven't done nearly as many videos. But I think really to answer that question is just when we first started, we recognized that was such a powerful thing, you know, and I really enjoyed doing it. Like I love telling the story. And, you know, it was like 3 years of doing that, just on the road, you know, at the trailers, the farmers markets, all those pop-up events. And I would definitely be lying if I said like it didn't get to the point to where it was starting to kind of tire me out a little bit too. But I realized too, you kind of go through phases. You really do kind of have to, you know, my vision is to grow and become a fairly large business. And, you know, you aren't going to be able to do that by being that person, you know, at every single event.
Yep.
And you really got to find, you know, I mean, make the decision, risky as it could be too, of, you know, how can you still create that? You know, I mean, through the training, finding the right people.
The delegation is the toughest piece.
It is, you know, and having those team members that can bring that energy, you know, bring aspects of the story, the education, and still create that excitement of the consumer. And we do a pretty good job of that in store. You know, we have really good team members in store, but hopefully we can kind of, you know, get back to that. I think that's really, really powerful.
Well, Jon, your story is really great. And it's been fun to have you on our podcast. We like to end each episode with 3 rapid fire questions. Nice. But before we go to that, we're going to take a quick message to hear a message from a sponsor.
Hi, this is Shannon Hahn with the Department of Transportation and the Small Business Program. I'm here to talk to you today about the DBE and the SBE programs. The DBE program is for disadvantaged small businesses, so that's minority and women, and the SBE program is for non-minority and non-women-owned businesses. These programs provide business assistance to contribute to the growth and self-sufficiency of businesses in the transportation industry. Services include business skills development, training, networking opportunities, bonding assistance, and much, much more. So if you're a highway-related business, please go to our website. You'll see what the eligibility criteria is at mdt.mt.gov. You can call our 1-800 number, which is 800-883-5811. So give us a call. Thanks.
Welcome back. Are you ready to answer some rapid fire questions?
Let's go. Yep.
All right. I'm going to start it off. What is your favorite seafood?
Salmon.
But what kind? Because you were talking about the two
different
kinds.
Yeah. So sockeye salmon is, and I'm tough because so I'm like,
and how to cook it too, I think.
Yeah.
Just for the audience.
Well, yeah. I'm so weird because here's my answer. Sockeye salmon, because I eat it 90% of the time. It's like just a salmon that's like, it's, you know, we always have. It's just easy to eat. It's my favorite. King salmon is more of that treat. King salmon's so rich, but this is not going to be the best answer. It's kind of boring. But my favorite way to cook salmon is the way that, you know, I just, you can cook it a lot and constantly eat it that way instead of doing something that's, you know, really pretty, takes a long time to like prep. But all I do is thaw it out. I just do olive oil, smother it in olive oil. And then smother it. Okay. And then I do, you know, just pepper. And then lately I've been doing Celtic sea salt because I love that crunch. And that stuff's like so good for you. And then big old fat globs of butter. Like Cannery Gold or some like pure grass-fed butter.
Yeah.
Like fat chunks.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah. So if it's like one portion, 2 big fat chunks, but it's so good. It's so tasty. And then I just bake it, for the most part, unless I'm doing something like maybe cedar planks or something on the grill. But I just bake it, a portion or two is just at 375 degrees in the oven for like 19 to 21 minutes. And the trick is to have a food thermometer. You want to hit it at 140 and then take it out, and then it'll still get to like 155, right around there. It won't dry out. And then, as you serve it, all that stuff left in the pan, all the oil and the butter.
It over.
Oh yeah. Just
so good.
it.
And then what kind of sides do you put? Sorry, I'm just adding because I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, most of the time, see, again, I'm not that exciting. Like I do a lot of the vegetable supplements. Like I drink powder to get my veggies. So I'll just straight eat salmon.
You're getting your protein.
Yeah.
And other like healthy things that
And the
salmon
fats,
has,
a lot of
and
fats,
olive oil's healthy.
ton of fat. But a lot of times I'll do a sweet potato.
Oh, I love sweet potatoes.
Me
or green beans, probably my go-to.
I love green beans and broccoli. Broccoli's a fave.
Broccoli's always good, and I was always really big on rice for a long time, but kind of out of that right now.
Cool. Okay, our next question is, what's some of the best advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh.
We didn't say they were easy questions. We just said they were rapid questions.
Ish.
Yeah.
Rapid-ish.
Two kind of stand out to me. I can't remember who told me this. It was actually on a networking event here in Billings, but they had brought up to where, if as a business owner, entrepreneur, wherever you're at, if you're really struggling to like do these certain things and you're really not that great at them, to recognize that and, work with other people or hire that stuff out if you can. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've really struggled with is that, I try to do a lot on my own, and, a lot of it's out of, not just because I want to, a lot of it's because you need to. I mean, you can't afford to bring in a consultant or, an agency to do all your ads for you or these things. But, that was one that really stood out to me. And whenever I'm like, stressed out, freaking out, trying to get something sorted out, that always kind of comes to the back of my mind. And then
hire it out.
Yeah. And, and I know that's not necessarily like the best answer ish, because there's so many underlying factors to that.
Yeah.
But I think, if you have that in the back of your mind, it's really helped me, because it's also allowed me to hand off a lot of things to our team.
Yeah.
Now that we're growing a decent team, a lot of times we're so busy and we're all maximized, but, we got really good people that would actually love to take on some of these projects.
Yeah.
So that's been a big one. And then the other one is, it was actually something that my stepdad told me, because I was struggling, because I started this business and I was a few years into it and we were starting to do pretty good. And I had an old mentor from the fishing industry who really got me going in like the factories, and someone I really looked up to, like an executive that I followed around the industry and went from different jobs with him. And, he just wasn't that big of a fan of what I was doing. He was always trying to get me back. He didn't understand, like, like what are you really doing here? You're not making much money to get started. Just didn't realize all that. And I remember my stepdad told me that, there's going to be a lot of people that, just don't see what you see. Mm-hmm. And you really can't be discouraged by that. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be times where, a lot of times those people are close. Yep. And everyone, as a business owner, I'm sure everyone's got thick skin, but a lot of times, like, those people you really look up to, like, that can hurt, and it gets you to start questioning, like, kind of laying in bed, like, man, I did have it pretty good. It was like that, I was building myself up. I was running plants, making good money. Mm-hmm. But then you kind of start remembering, like, really weren't that happy. You're gone all the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best environment. You didn't really enjoy those people you're working with. And now you think of all the energy you have of doing your own thing, like if you're lucky enough to find it. And that was one that was really big to me. Because, it's really hard. Like, if it's a family member or someone you look up to that doesn't understand why the heck you would do that, or all the work you're putting in, it kind of starts feeding in a negative way. So recognizing that was a big one.
Got to stay positive.
Yeah.
Got to stay positive.
Yep.
So my last question for you is, what do you do to manage a healthy work-life balance? Especially because you got a 9-year-old.
Yeah. It's probably just my routine, and I'm changing a lot, but I'm always listening, reading, learning new things. But right now, I wake up early every day. I do some of my personal stuff with like journaling type stuff, affirmation type things, a quick like 5-minute meditation all before he wakes up, and then getting a little bit of work done. But one thing I've been into lately, which I found huge help and benefits from, is I'll do a morning walk with the dogs. That's part of the routine now. Just a quick like 5-10 minute walk. But then when I come back, I do just a cold bath.
Oh, you're into cold plunger.
Oh my gosh. Like I've took cold showers forever, but we've kind of been going through a time in the business to where we're starting to grow the team. We're starting to get procedure systems in place. So that means like we're tightening up a lot of like, what we're eating into our profit, right? So we're trying to get the team going, get kind of a infrastructure in place to allow us to start going.
Yeah.
But as you do that, you're not necessarily like always growing revenue as you're doing that. So, I mean, you're seeing all these things slowly depleting, but at the same time, you're seeing the team grow and like, the vision is kind of starting to happen. But, that was really hard. So there was a lot of stress. Things were a lot tighter. So you got to push a little bit harder and do more things. And what I realized about the cold baths is right when you jump into that, like as you're in it and when you get out, like earlier before you got in, you're all stressed out.
Yeah. Oh, you can't think about anything but being cold.
And you just
breathing,
focused, present, like that was
It's
awesome.
Extremely healthy for you.
Yes.
It's extremely healthy for you.
But that was more just because of like the stress. Because as soon as I got out of that, it just like instantly made everything a little bit easier.
Yeah.
No.
I'm probably happy you did it. After every time you do it, you might dread it, but you're like, once you get out, you feel a lot better.
Yep.
I say that I haven't done it, but I've heard people do it, and they say what you say.
It's a huge mind thing too, because you have to get your mind around getting in there. And that is one of the biggest problems with people is I'm one of those people that's like, if it's not a heated pool, I don't really want to go in it.
Yeah,
so like
you do
a cold
the hard
plunge
things to make everything else a little easier.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a big one. But no, other than that, try to work out once a day, which is really huge. And then lately with my son, it's been so nice too, because now we finally got to the point where there's, a little bit more team. I got a little bit more free time. So he's huge into sports. I was always big into sports.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we work all the time together. I mean, lately, every day, the weeks that I have him, I mean, maybe not an hour every day, but I mean, baseball like crazy right now. So being in all the games, being in all the practices, and then doing our own sessions.
Cool.
And I realized like that actually makes me so happy.
Yeah.
So that's a big one too.
That's really cool.
I love that. Well, thank you for coming on. Where can people find you? How can they learn more about you?
Yeah, so if you're in Billings, definitely come down to our retail store. We're off at 32nd Hesper Road. Google Alaskan Seafood Guys next to Harvest Tech. Come in there. I mean, check out all of our stuff. Like, I'm in there pretty much 90% of the time, but I'll be in Alaska for a few days. But like our retail staff, our newest team member, Jessica, is amazing in there. I mean, she'll show you everything. I think it's just a fun place because like, we've got the build your own boil bar.
Yeah.
Like that sounds
really fun.
It
cool.
is cool. I'm coming in to take a video.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really cool. And it's a small store, but there's a lot of cool, fun stuff. I think you'll be very surprised about the kits and the prices and just get to talk and hear about everything. But I would recommend going to the store. I mean, otherwise definitely follow us on social media, but the store is like where you can really get a feel for who we are.
Yeah. Alaskan Seafood Guys.
Yep.
.com or
AlaskanSeafoodGuys.com to check out the website. Another kind of thing we're working on right now is we're realizing that our website is all focused on everyone outside of Billings. So many people from Billings are going to our website and seeing all these like nationwide prices and really getting thrown off. So we're hoping in the next couple of weeks we're going to have our physical retail store moved online where people can do the pickups.
Oh, awesome.
That's
so
really
that
cool.
will be a big one for our business customers, our Billings customers, give them a little bit better experience. But
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you. I just want to leave it with one business tip, and this is around your whole premise is you can never see your business the way people on the receiving end of your service can, and listening to them is the only way to learn and improve. And I think
that's powerful.
You do that every day in your business.
Thank you.
That's why you're
a really good quote.
So successful.
Cool.
So.
Thanks, Jon.
Yeah, thank you guys.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Make sure you are subscribed to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, wherever you podcast, including YouTube.
Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway and Instagram at TheVault_201.
Don't forget to visit us at thevault@201.com and subscribe to our newsletter.
We will see you next time.
Bye. Thank you to the Small Business Development Center for sponsoring The Vault at 201 North Broadway. The Small Business Development Center offers free personalized support from business plans to financial projections and beyond, empowering small businesses to thrive. Reach out to us at bigsky economic development.org.